The Agenda is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service, moving forward.
Kerwin Gaines here, host of The Agenda. Good news, we are back. It's always good news to be back here on The Agenda and bringing information to you and your families and ensuring that your issues stay at the top of the agenda for the state and your local municipality. And this season, it's been power-packed. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to see DETV streaming the debates this week with the gubernatorial economic development debates right here in Wilmington, but we were part of that. We're filming this week. It's a lot going on. So let me tell you something. Stay tuned because great things are coming, and the energy is big here through our election process here in the state of Delaware, and it has never affected DETV and The Agenda like it has now, and that's all because of you all watching, posting your comments, letting people know that you are paying attention, and the politicians have to come here and state their truth and let you know where they stand and give them accountability. So we're going to keep that going right now, tonight, today with Mr. Branden Fletcher Dominguez. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kerwin.
I mean, it's great to know when someone genuinely says, hey, I watched the show, I know what's going on, and thank you so much for joining us here. I love to see young people in the process. It is great to see people. It kind of makes me feel like I'm getting older because I remember when I was a young person and I was, trying to make things happen and everything. And now you guys are coming in 24, you're making it happen, doing big things. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'll say, I didn't decide to run for office to be the youngest state rep or the first Gen Z elected official. I decided to run because I see problems. And right now we're living an increasingly divided time in our politics, and we need people from the community to step up in leadership. And so excited to be here and talk with you about some of the issues and solutions that we're putting forth.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, we've talked about it in the past with different guests. There's a common theme. And that theme is coming up, and over the past 8 weeks, I would say I've heard it more and more and more, and that is the Delaware way.
Yes.
There's a Delaware way of doing it. I read it in the news journal the other day. I read it online. We're tired of the Delaware way. We're tired of the Delaware way. We talked about that a little bit online. I wouldn't say that you're tired of it, but you're saying there's a new way that's on the horizon.
Well, I'll say for people who are watching who maybe don't know what the Delaware way is, my take on it is we have, because of our size and because we see our politicians all the time at the grocery store or at the train station, that we can get things done, right? We can meet with our governor, we can meet with our mayor, our state rep is
all at Wawa.
All at Wawa
on a
right?
Saturday morning. Yeah.
And if we bring all the right people, right, to the table, that we can make decisions. But what I've seen in being a community organizer and activist since I was 16 years old is that who is at the table matters. And the people who come to these tables are not people who look like me. They're not black and brown. They're not young. Maybe they don't come from wealthy backgrounds. And so I think thinking about who is at the table, this new Delaware way is about, uplifting people who traditionally aren't a part of the political process. Right. And also what you see is elected officials who are more likely to give unconditional support to big corporations and wealthier citizens, while people who are affected by the policies are shut out and pushed to the margins, and maintaining those systems is prioritized over true justice and equity. And so how I see it is what we need to do is ensure that the people who are most affected by an issue have a full say in how policy is made. And so housing legislation should be decided not solely by, developers and builders, but we should also be listening to renters who are impacted and unhoused people. Criminal justice bills shouldn't just be championed by the Fraternal Order of Police, but we should bring police and families who've been impacted by police violence. And so ensuring that the people who, are most impacted have a full say in the policymaking process, and that we're, being intentional about justice and equity for all people.
Speaking of that, you mentioned that you've been at this since you were 16 years old. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
Yeah, well, I am 24 years old. I moved to Delaware when I was 11 years old from Brooklyn, New York. I came here with my mom, my dad, and my siblings right on the 4th Street, right off the 4th Street Chinese bus, the Chinatown bus on 4th and Orange. And they raised us as best as they can here, sent us to public schools. I went to George Reed Middle School, William Penn, and then got a scholarship to go to Wilmington University, where I studied public policy. And really, growing up and, at times it was difficult for my family. I come from a working class background, so my parents weren't wealthy. At times I've seen them struggle financially to be able to put food on the table and, pay the rent, and have lived in apartments that were substandard and, had to navigate that as a young person. But, always grew up with the values of giving back to the community. And so despite us not having a lot, my mom and my father always raised us to give back to our neighbors. So we were the household that, fed the neighbor if they didn't have dinner one night, or, we would pass clothes on to the kids who, couldn't afford new. And so those values were instilled in me as a young person to give back to others. And really being a passionate person for history and politics. I've always loved history and politics. And it was in my early years of going to Wilmington University where I met Eugene Young and Drew Series through Network Delaware, and started to learn about community organizing and what is, government at a local level and state level. I had an understanding of what national politics was, but really started to look at who was my legislator, what is the importance of what they do, how does it affect my community, and learning that, going to school, and then just being here and just organizing. What you see is certain blocks where you live, have resources and are safe and have homes that are, renovated, and you can turn around the corner and it's economically disadvantaged, and you have, lots of drug use, and really seeing this segregation based on where you lived and what you had access to is what really inspired me to continue to do community organizing. Mm-hmm. And so I do that now, and am a housing advocate on the West Side, and work to try to improve conditions of housing with my neighbors.
I think it's great. So over the past, 2 months, we've had debates, some of them hosted here with DETV, and the common theme is housing, right, within the discussion, from economic development to housing, to equity in housing, to so many other things. Housing has been the conversation. Last night, for the gubernatorial debate, there were questions in regards to people being evicted, their rights, how they should be treated, what can we do to prevent that in this climate, in this environment. And some of the answers were strong, but some of the answers were honestly sketchy. So I'm asking you, what do you think? As a future state representative, possibly, you have the opportunity to change legislation, to make things happen, to be that voice in Dover that represents people that are unrepresented. A lot of people feel as though, hey, you didn't pay your rent, you gotta go, right? This is the country in which we live. We live in a capitalistic society. Tough, I'm sorry, but you have to leave. And there's oftentimes not thoughts that, hey, well, that is going to affect the lives of children that may be with them. It's going to be a public safety condition for several different reasons. It's going to deal with homelessness, which is eventually going to fall into the taxpayer's back. Mm-hmm. We live in one of the richest countries in the world. we have defined what it's like to have extra, but yet we have so many people that have scarcity when it comes to housing, scarcity when it comes to food. And if we want to talk about education, we can talk about Delaware being within the one of the lowest 40 states in the country right now. So we have a lot of opportunity for growth. Housing is an opportunity maker for us. One of the points that I brought up to the possible governors last night was during the debate was other states are doing a better job than we are. Wanted to
It's
make
not
that clear.
rocket science.
It's not as hard as what we're making it, right? I understand that it's difficult, but it's not as hard as what we're making it, one. Two, they've been able to do so in a bipartisan way. And they've been able to make it happen. So my question to you is, what do you plan to do?
Thank you for asking this question, because housing is so central to everything, right? Housing justice is economic justice, is health justice, is reproductive justice. All of those things affect, someone's ability to be able to have housing. And so, in addition to, of course, strengthening renters' protections, is to invest in home ownership opportunities for Black and brown people. We have a lot of people that I've been talking to, knocking on hundreds of doors in the West Side, that are from these communities, live in these communities, want to stay in these communities, but they can't afford to. And then we have seniors who are in homes that are in desperate need of repair. Ceilings falling apart, plumbing, pipes being with leaks and all of that. And so how I see it is we can pilot programs like rent to own or rent to buy, where a renter can pay the monthly price renting for the long-term opportunity of home ownership. We can, pilot a program where we take these derelict buildings that we know have been neglected due to predatory practices, if we're being honest, and put them in the hands of the community, and a community land trust, which is something that I think we can, build off of the land bank and try to do. Give, ownership to the renters who've been facing hazardous conditions for so long, invest in those buildings, turning them around and bringing them up to code and in safe living conditions, and so that people can start to own property and affordable housing in perpetuity. And so that's one solution to the housing crisis. We can take vacant properties and put them, back into use for homeownership opportunities for people. Another thing is we have a lot of new developments being built in Wilmington, Delaware. We have over 2,000 new units, and I can look out my window and see towers being built every day in Wilmington.
Do you see that as a good thing or a bad thing?
I think development is a good thing. I think cities grow, but what we need is development without displacement. And what we need to do is ensure that any development that receives public dollars, which many of these developments receive tax breaks through the Downtown Development District Fund, have to be required to set aside affordable units. And so there are models, like you said, from other states that we can take and bring here, like a 50-30-20, 50% market rate, 30% middle, and 20% low income. Or we can do 60-40, 60% market, 40% for people who are working regular jobs. And so I think with the housing, we want to see development. It's great to see new people move to the city of Wilmington, but we have to think about developing in a way that is equitable and that people who are from these communities can afford these communities, and that we see a better quality of life as possible. But we all want to be able to afford to stay.
Right. So what are the people in your district saying in regards to this? Are they feeling the pressure? Do they feel marginalized? Do they feel as though they're being overlooked and they're worried about, I guess, the security in regards to their homes?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who I've spoken with that have brought me into their homes, and we see conditions that are so unsafe. People who have leaky pipes, have ceilings with mold, and they just need help. And so, I've worked with Westside Grows Together, and they're a great organization in our community that has identified homeowners that they have used funds, grant funds, to be able to help people fix up their homes. That's something that we should be thinking about expanding. And so at the state level, ensuring that we're increasing funding to homeowners who are from these communities so that they're able to fix up their homes. So as Wilmington is changing and the property values rise, you have your home that is secure, that is watertight, that is repaired, and it really is about maintaining generational wealth. And so to me, it's also an issue of racial justice.
Racial justice.
Yeah, housing justice is racial justice, because when we invest in home ownership opportunities for Black and brown people, when we ensure that they're able to keep their homes, we're saying that you deserve to stay in your communities. And you know, there's a long legacy of racist housing policy that we also need to acknowledge when we're talking about repairing wrongs for some of the things like redlining that we know existed, deed theft, which is another thing, tangled deeds, you know, opens up the door for a lot of predatory practices for people. And so we see a lot of that happening now, where maybe grandma passed away and, you know, she never put the house into a child's name. And so what happens there? And so we want to ensure, you know, as the next state representative, advocating for people to keep their homes. And the work that I've done as an eviction prevention navigator has been primarily with tenants who, you know, live in, you know, substandard housing, to help know what your rights are, know what your responsibilities are, so that you can win repairs, and so that your landlord can start to make the repairs. And so it isn't about, you know, I don't believe every tenant should be able to live for free. I think obviously you have to pay your rent to be able to live somewhere, but we also deserve to live in housing that is safe and secure, and is, you know, free from mold and from things that make it unlivable.
You mentioned that another one of the issues that you're really passionate about is transportation here in the state of Delaware. Throughout this week, I've been back and forth from Sussex County to Newcastle County every day this week, just about, except one. And I'm thinking to myself, how great would it be to have a train?
Yeah.
How great would it have been to have a bus, a trolley, anything to get from one side of this state to the other? And it's really not hard. We only have 3 counties. But it just doesn't exist. I mean, I think DART does a very good job for what they have. I think there's always opportunities for improvement, and there are opportunities for improvement, let's be honest. But when we talk about transportation in the first state, and some of that has been brought up in the debates, I just don't know, Branden, what we can do here.
Yeah.
We're just not gridded, so to speak, for successful public transportation. This is Kerwin's opinion. I'm sure others will you know, say that I'm wrong or whatever, but to me,
you're right.
And we're noticing that now with the traffic patterns going through Middletown and so many other places, that we were not designed to support the amount of people that we have, and our infrastructure was not designed. The part that ticks me off, Branden, is that there is no effort made, in my opinion, this is Kerwin's world, to rectify this situation. I'm not seeing it from, you know, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to make this enhancement, we've gotten plenty of infrastructure money and ARPA money and all this other stuff, but I'm just not seeing it doing anything when it comes to public transportation.
Yeah, I think it's a major issue that, especially in my district, which is west side of Wilmington, so for the viewers who are watching, you think of like 4th Street, Lancaster Avenue, 2nd Street, Lincoln Street, Union Street, some of which are state-owned. 4th Street is a state street, is a state highway, technically. We have highways that run through our communities, and pedestrian safety is a priority, continues to be in areas like that where accidents are prevalent. And so we have to think about, you know, how are we prioritizing calming traffic in some of these high traffic areas like 2nd Street, where a resident can walk out and die. You step onto the sidewalk, a car is going 80 miles an hour in some cases. And we see that in Hilltop, there's a high concentration of accidents that are happening. And so some of the work that I've done this past year has been around transportation. And so we've pulled together our civic association on 4th Street to get neighbors to think about where are the areas in our community that we need to prioritize traffic safety. How can we have DelDOT be more accountable to our community to ensure that these changes are being made? And so as the next state representative, what I would do is ensure that the projects that the community are coming up with, the areas that we need traffic calming devices put, are added into the bond bill, and that we have community transportation funds going to these areas where accidents happen. And I think overall, statewide, we have had a train station before. I believe we have at one point, Delaware. So there are tracks that exist from northern Newcastle down to Sussex. So I think it's a matter of priority.
It's fixable. This
and
is
right now
we're not asking anything.
Yes,
like, we
and
can
what it
fix
is
this.
we have a prioritization of vehicles over people. And so what we need to do is think about how are we prioritizing people over cars. If you drive, you said Middletown, right? There's a lot of people moving there. There's a lot of people moving into Wilmington as well. And the traffic is only going to continue to get worse. And so we've severely underinvested in public transportation, in ensuring that bus routes are operating, ensuring that people have access to, DART is another one. Cost is another aspect for that. Ensuring that people could afford the bus is something that we have to consider. If it's free bus passes, then let's do it. But I think investing in public infrastructure like our buses, ensuring that we have safer streets on some of these areas where we know accidents keep on happening, we have to prioritize at the state level.
You're dealing with some pretty heavy issues here, and I love the goals. How do you propose to get this stuff passed down in Dover?
Yes.
Like, what can you be one of the trusted ones in Dover that I will see being bipartisan, that will reach across the aisle, that will make things happen?
Yes, I am by, work trade. I'm a community organizer, so I often bring people together who have different opinions on how to get to what we all can agree is like the same thing that we want. We all want safe streets for our children. We all want to live in a place free of gun violence. We all want to live in a place where everyone has a home, but sometimes there's disagreement on how we get there. And so I think there is room for compromise, but we have to make sure that we are amplifying the needs of the community in the policy-making process, and that DelDOT in particular, we're putting measures together where community input is something that has to be at every step of the way. We have to ensure that the people who are most affected, who live in the communities where we're going to be discussing traffic improvements, are there, and that their voices are heard, and so that we're making the right investments. It also looks like working with the city of Wilmington. And so I have experience organizing with our residents of the city of Wilmington and members of the council, and ensuring that we're leveraging funding from the state level to the city to ensure that we can get some of these streets improved.
So, we can trust you in Dover to be that bipartisan, handshaking, back and forth. That's the only way we're going to get anything done down there. And it's of great importance, and I've pressed this to all the candidates, from lieutenant governor to governor to even our delegates in D.C. I'm, as a Delawarean, as a taxpayer, as that guy, I am expecting them we can no longer have this polarization due to party. I think it's absolutely necessary. So I'm trusting you, Branden, that you're going to be down there and you're going to make that happen for us. Tell me, in closing, why do people need to go out and vote for you?
Yes, so I am a community organizer. I don't come from a political family, nor have I ever ran for office before. I decided to run because the people in my neighborhood so desperately need change. They need representatives who not only will listen and engage, but amplify the community's voices so that they can be heard. And so I have experience bringing our neighbors together to advance change, to push for policy and getting right to representation passed for tenants who are facing eviction. So working to try to advance these changes in our community. And I think also it's time for a new generation of leadership.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it is time for a fresh face. It's time for fresh ideas. One thing I've noticed about your generation is that the fearlessness is amazing. We saw the fearlessness in 2020 with the riots, right here in Wilmington, being a part of that, and seeing how much that in that period of time, in that summer of 2020, the amount of legislation that changed in a matter of months by the actions of those who went out and did some great things and some not so great things. But nonetheless, their fearless nature invoked change. Now, if we can turn that into a peaceful demonstration and turn that into a different way of doing things, I'm expecting that change. I'm expecting that same level of push to make things happen.
Well, I started off in, doing community organizing at 16 years old when our schools were facing referendum and, our teachers had to ration paper. And so I have firsthand experience of the inequities that exist within our education system. In 2020, I took to the streets peacefully with my friends, with other people who are in our community who were frustrated with the lack of justice in our state, nationally and in our state. And we took to the streets and we organized peacefully at the Justice of the Peace to demonstrate and call for more police transparency and accountability when there are cases of misconduct. And so now I'm running and I encourage everyone in our community to get out and vote because we need these changes in our community. And I think it takes someone who doesn't come from a traditional political background.
Sometimes you have to go outside the box. I hate that expression, but sometimes you just need to be that.
So that's why I'm doing it. And most importantly, over the last 6 years, I've built deep and authentic relationships with members across all communities of the 3rd District. And so I also think it's important that we have representatives who are rooted in the community, ensuring that any decision is a decision that gets made with folks. And so it looks like having monthly meetings and coffees with the residents of our community, ensuring that they know what legislation is on the docket, what bills I might be expected to vote on, or what funding is going to be dispersed through the budgetary process, and having people engage. And so I bring that model of change, of bringing people together to advance things. And I think as a legislator, we need more people who can do that so that we can ensure that we're in constant communication, always open to receiving and giving feedback, and sort of taking away the smoke and mirrors of Leg Hall and opening it up to the people who are most impacted by the issues.
Branden, I love your enthusiasm, my friend. I love your enthusiasm. I hope that it continues through a successful campaign. Regardless, you have a friend here on the agenda. Thank you so much for being a part and coming on to the show this evening.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So thank you all for tuning in this week to the agenda. We have a young minds here making it happen in the 3rd District in Wilmington. Please get out and vote. The time is ticking, right? So please do what's necessary to ensure that your vote is counted and casted. We look forward to seeing you next week right here on the agenda.
Yeah.